You're listening to Brave Girls with Tracy Im, where we choose to empower you to be a better leader, mentor, and coach in the world. We'll share stories of people who have achieved great heights by overcoming adversity and rising to the challenge, all while pursuing their passions. These courageous people will inspire you to have faith in yourself and take bold action. Right here with the host of Brave Girls, Tracy Im.
Episode 33, Always Negotiate with Stephanie Ranno. I want to introduce you to my friend Stephanie Ranno, who's a recruiter at TorchLight Hire, which is a staffing firm for marketing and communications professionals in the Mid-Atlantic area, where she loves helping people in a meaningful way as they deal with the ups and the downs of work. You'll love her story of how she landed in the staffing world through a chance encounter in a bar when she was a fundraiser at the tender age of 26. She shares why she loves working as a recruiter and the leaders that have taught her the human aspect of the work world. She also talks about the business development skill set, to include follow-up, that she has mastered over the years. We also talk about the importance of building and nurturing relationships and why you need to exercise positive persistence in the spirit of serving and helping others. Stephanie shares that the purpose of business is to solve a problem. Money is merely the outcome and the result of you solving a problem for someone. She encourages us to become a better you on your path to finding meaning. You'll love Stephanie's tips on how to present yourself in the marketplace by using specific metrics and data on the impact that you've had in an organization. She also recommends networking over blindly applying for jobs to find your next opportunity. She suggests using LinkedIn to help you connect with others while you're doing a job search. On the interview front, she talks about telling stories to sell the employer on why you're the best candidate and that you want to move forward in the interview process. She also highly encourages you to always negotiate to show how this opportunity will fit into your whole life and align with what you want in your career. My favorite part of the conversation, though, is when Stephanie allows herself to be vulnerable and talk about being a working mother of 3, and one of her daughters was diagnosed on the autism spectrum. I like her perspective on work-life balance and how she manages the constant trade-offs, as well as the value of having a strong support system. She relies on her strength and blessings to practice the art of forgiveness in her toughest moments. I believe that Stephanie Ranno is a brave girl, and she's here to help heal the world with her unique gifts as she works to help others find meaning in the world of work. So let's go, and remember, always negotiate, as Stephanie Ranno advocates. So welcome to Brave Girls with Tracy M. Tonight, I'm speaking to Stephanie Ranno, who is one of my marketing and communications colleagues here in Baltimore. She has been in the staffing and recruiting world for quite some time and is well known in the area. And right now she is at TorchLight Hire, which is a recruiting and staffing firm in the DMV. And it's one of the fastest growing firms in the area, led by Heidi Parsons, another colleague of mine. And I just want to say welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about how you got into the world of recruiting, specifically in the area of like marketing and communications.
Sure. So I have a funny path into staffing and recruiting. I think no one really goes to school and says, oh, I'm going to be in staffing and recruiting when I grow up, or I'm going to do business development or sales when I grow up. It's just not a path that people consider. I was a history major, theater minor through undergrad. And so I was working in fundraising at the time, and I actually ended up meeting the owners of a staffing company out of Boston at a bar. And they were telling me that they were looking at Baltimore as the next place to open an office. And I said, Baltimore's going through a resurgence, and you should totally come and consider, putting your company here, an office here. And I just offered to look at spaces for them when they went back to Boston that they didn't get to see. And I have am not an artist in any way whatsoever. So I was sketching out what the places looked like, and I ended up faxing them, yes, faxing them, these images of the different spaces and giving my recommendations. So at the end of that sort of, I guess, helping them out experience, they said, hey, have you ever thought about doing staffing and recruiting? And I was in fundraising at the time, and I thought, no, I've never considered that. Would you like to open our office?
Wow.
I know, it was really kind of crazy. They said, we'll train you. Our office is will be in downtown Baltimore, and our focus is the printing industry. So the back end side of any marketing communications. So I kind of started at the final product and then printed product, and then moved into the front end with the other agencies that I worked at. But they gave me a shot. They said, we'll train you. We'll train you on recruiting. We'll train you on staffing. We'll train you in printing, and then we'll kind of set you loose. And for a 26, 27-year-old at the time with no ties and, nothing to hold me down, I was like, it sounds like a great opportunity. So I was very close, and still am, with the consultant that was in the nonprofit I was working with at the time. And I told him, I confided in him that I had this opportunity, and he said, you should go for it. So I did. And I have been in staffing and recruiting now for 13 years.
Wow.
And I love it. I just love it.
Wow. Well, you probably showed a lot of initiative to these people from Boston, that by just saying, hey, I'll help you out with like finding the space, and then faxing them these drawings. Like, they probably saw something in you that, like, wow, she's a go-getter. She's like a people person. She could learn this staffing, recruiting stuff.
It wasn't rocket science, but I think it took a level of, like you said, initiative, and just wanting to go out there. And what I loved about them, and what I've found in every single agency that I've ever worked in, is the ones that work the best for me are the ones that are about the relationship. And so the things that I learned from that company, I remember one of the very first things that I was taught from a sales perspective was a story from one of the owners who said, I called on the guy for an entire year. And every time I called him, I would follow up, I'd send an email, or I'd call him when he'd ask me to, and call me next month. And he said at the end of that year, this CEO brought him in and said, let's talk about a contract. And he was like, oh, you have a need now. And he said, I was really impressed with your follow-up. Like, you did what you said you were going to do. And that really stuck with me. And then I remember learning on the recruiting side, the folks that we put out there, it's not like we're placing pencils, we're placing people into these roles. And you have to remember that if they don't get their time card in, or it doesn't get approved, and they don't get a paycheck, they might not be able to pay rent on time. They might not be able to get something for their kids. And I just remember that was like the very first moment that I thought, this company and this industry makes huge differences in people's lives. That was sort of like my foundation and formation. The company's called Semper. I should give them a shout out because they were my first. And I follow them. They're still around. I follow them on LinkedIn, and they're doing really well. But they did it right. They set me up into an industry that, to this day, I love. I love the impact that you can have on people's lives, whether that's a candidate or whether that's a client. It's stressful right now to build teams, to find a job if you're laid off, or if your team goes through a restructure and you're really not doing the work that you want to be doing. Those are really stressful moments. There have been so many great leaders that I have worked with in this industry that got it right about the human center of what we do. And then the money will follow, right?
Right. Yeah. And because I wanted to ask you about business development and the skill set that you've had to develop to do business development, because you've done it for several organizations. And, I think you're right. I think the relationship's essential, but I agree the follow-up is essential. I'm always impressed when vendors they're not nagging me, but they catch me at the right time, and they've stayed in front of me 7 or 8 times. And then when I do have the need, I remember them, and I remember that they are there. And so talk a little bit about that, and then how you close the deal.
Oh boy. So I think you're right on the persistence that you need to have in business development. And it's a twofold thing. So I'm fairly old school in how I do business development, and I have tried to continue to update the ways that I, do sales or business development. And some of it is just natural in being in the industry. You start to develop those relationships, and the longer that you're in it, your clients become your candidates that then become your clients again. And so you start having these kind of career spanning relationships by just the mere nature of being in it. Oftentimes people will talk about, how do you really get perfect at something? Well, you have to practice it. You have to do it 10,000 hours, right? To get to a place of feeling like an expert. And you're still learning. You have to keep moving and learning. But I find, I call it positive persistence. So you're hoping not to being annoying. I'm sure I will guarantee I have annoyed people in my persistence, whether it's a phone call followed by a LinkedIn message, followed by an email, followed by a call a couple months later. And I hope that it's in the spirit of, I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you build a team. I'm here to help you finish a project. I'm here to help you start a project. So I think if you're taking it from the approach, and I always go into a cold call, I still make cold calls. I've been doing this for 13 years, and I still make cold calls every month. I have a list of people that I have never talked to before, and I will call them and I will reach out to them cold. And I've developed business that way. So I think your mindset, though, going into it is, I'm here to help. I'm here to offer. And when I was younger in the business, I used to not necessarily give first. I would expect some reciprocity. Let me give you an example. Our talent are our business, right? We place them, we make a fee on them, or if they're working for us, our fee on the work that they're doing for our client. And if we place them on a contracting position, then they are our employees delivering on projects for our clients. But I have, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 people, sometimes a day, that may reach out to me for a connection or an introduction. And in the past, I may not have done that as readily. You have to manage your time for sure. And there are, the more that I can manage my time, the more I can fit in some introductions that I'm not going to make anything off of. However, it takes me minutes to potentially make an introduction that could change somebody's life. And to me, that's what it's all about. Those are the folks that will remember me when they then are about to build a team, or when they're looking for their next opportunity and we have the perfect opportunity for them. So I feel like as I have gotten more experienced and can do the work a little bit quicker anyway, or can kind of target very quickly, reach out to folks, be focused in my work, that frees up more time to be able to do the work that I do because I love doing the work. And maybe the money doesn't follow directly behind it. I heard somebody at an HR conference, this Hacking HR, which is taking off globally. It's this great movement. And they said, the purpose of the purpose of business is not to make money. The purpose of business is to solve a problem. Money is the result of you solving a problem for someone. And I thought, yes, that's right. The purpose of our work, and I kind of feel like, to take it out from a corporate standpoint, the purpose of your business is to solve some sort of problem, a problem that maybe your customers don't see right now. Maybe you're like future oriented, or maybe a problem that has been a problem all of, for time and eternity. My dad's a plumber. He solves people's problems. When their plumbing doesn't work, he goes in and fixes it. So that's a problem. We're going to continue to have that problem for the rest of our existence, we think. Unless
Exactly.
Who knows? But But that's the purpose of business, not just to make money. And people say, well, the purpose of business is to make profits and make money and shareholders, and we got it. Okay, like, yes, but that's the outcome if you're doing it right. So I think on the individual perspective too, the purpose of work in my mind, and I think in other people's minds, like-minded minds, is to become a better you. Like what you're doing 40 hours, 50 hours, 60 hours a week, some portion of that, it's not just to make money, but it is to find some meaning in what you're meant to be here for. And you might go, well, wow, staffing and recruiting and business development, how are you finding your meaning in that? But I impact people's lives. I know. Even just being present with someone that has just been laid off or just got a big promotion and is like responsible for hiring a huge team, or just went through a restructure and lost 10 team members. All of that, being present with them in that moment is then opens up the ability for me to help them, for me to make them feel at ease or let them know they've got it. So there's just so much impact that, and I just feel like I shared something on LinkedIn a couple of days ago. My mom always tells me whenever, at least a couple times a month, I'll say something about the medical field, and she'll be like, remember you wanted to be a doctor? And I'm like, Mom, I wanted to be a doctor when I was 16. And she's like, whatever happened to that? I'm like, well, I sucked at chemistry because chemistry is math, and I fainted at the sight of blood. I was going to be a terrible doctor. But I said, it dawned on me in that moment, the work that I do is helping people. It really is. It's and maybe it may not be healing them in a physical way, but it's healing them oftentimes in a mental capacity or in a meaningful way related to their work. And I think people hold on to a lot of pain through the work that they've done, no matter if they're 25 and they're starting out and it's not what they expected, or they're 65 and they are like, I want to work and I'm getting discriminated against, or I'm having trouble working with someone 30 years my junior. So I think I tangent.
No. I think, yeah. I wanted to ask you, what you see out there, or are there, rookie mistakes that people make that you're like, I can't believe you're making that mistake. Like, especially on the candidate side, because in your 13, 14 years of doing this, you've probably seen a million resumes, a million. And you follow up on candidate interviews and all of that. So what is there any couple of things that just you're like, if people would just get this right?
Yeah, I think my biggest thing, one of the flags that I keep waving over and over again, there's a couple of them, but here's a couple or in different areas. So when it comes to your resume, you need to quantify your work. You need to be able at this point in applying for jobs in any area, whether it's sales, marketing, IT, operations, procurement, financial, the financial health of the company, you need to be able to show how you solved a problem, with what solution, and the impact it had on the organization. So you need to show measurement of your work. So I increased revenue by X percent doing Y as measured by Z in 12 months. So really kind of getting specific about the impact that you had in the organization. And it doesn't have to be increasing revenue. It could be saving money. It could be increasing operational efficiencies. It could be increasing engagement with your internal employees or your customers. So there's all kinds of levers that you can pull on to show the impact of your work. One, that's on the resume side. On the search side, you need to utilize your network first and apply to less jobs via LinkedIn, Indeed. I love LinkedIn. I'm in it every day. It's an amazing tool. I use it for work. I do not like the LinkedIn quick apply. I get it, ease, but with ease, especially in the recruiting industry, comes I applied to 30 jobs. I didn't hear back from any. And all of a sudden, these little chinks in your confidence start to chip away at the foundation of you being a really good worker. And so I think the utilization of LinkedIn should be used to expand your network and to ask for introductions and to ask for connection with less jobs, but more effort on those jobs. So those are my two like flags that I like to wave. Show your impact, collect your data, make sure it's data driven, and use your network for your search. And don't rely on the technologies. Use the technologies to feed in information about companies that you want to follow, job titles that you want to look for, or that you want to potentially look at, but don't use them for the quick applies.
Right.
When it comes to interviewing, what I like to say about a resume is when you are creating it with your impact statements, those are the stories and the examples to use in your interview. It's almost like using a script in preparation for your interview. So what I often recommend to people the couple days before, definitely the night before, is you take your resume on one side, the job description on the other, and you match up where you've got the skills and experience and where your stories are. You have a couple of stories for each of those examples. And write them down. I did this for myself. I'd write them down on my own resume to like jog my memory. Not that I necessarily needed it. Don't hand that one to the interviewer. And then when you go in for that interview, you've got to let them know that you are the fit, that you want the job. So you talked about closing. How do you close? In the staffing or in the sales world, they always say, always be closing, right? Always be letting that person know, hiring manager, people on the team, remind them that you want the job, that you want to move forward in the interview process. You want to keep exploring the opportunity, whatever phrase works for you, but let them know that you're interested. Follow up with an email thank you to every single person that you meet with. Do it quickly, be concise, and make it specific. So not just thank you for your time, but something that they shared, that you connected on, that was unique to your conversation. Write that in the email. If you really want to knock it out of the park, you'll send a thank you note handwritten. I recommended to a woman who I've known for many years through my network, and she's moved out of marketing and now she's in an innovation. She's looking for innovation opportunities. And I'd offered, as I do to many folks, if you want some prep help prior to your interview, I'm happy to spend 20 minutes on the phone with you.
Right.
So she took me up on it. Not many people take you up on what you often offer for free, which is so crazy. Not many people take me up on introductions, and I offer that to many people. I'm not going to go and seek out those introductions for you. That's your job. But if you give me a little blurb and you say you want an introduction to someone, 90% of the time, I'm going to make that introduction for you. Make that connection, then I'm going to step out. I'm not going to get you the job. I'm going to make the introduction, step out. Unless it's a job that we're working on at TorchLight. And of course, then you would go through our process. But if it's just a soft intro, then I'll make it and step out. But she called me and she said, she sent me a LinkedIn message. I've got an interview for my dream job. And she was so excited for this opportunity. I said, when can we get on the phone? When can I help you? So she took me up on it and we did a prep. And then she sent me a message and she said, I sent my email thank yous. And what do I do next? And she said, there's one other candidate and they're interviewing this week. I said, you really want to knock it out of the park? You'll send a thank you note that drops today, a day or two on either side of the other person's interview. You're going to, that's going to impress that hiring manager. They're going to remember you. You took the time to write a handwritten note, and you're then all of a sudden, boom, back in there. Oh yeah, I had a great interview with her. Like, Tracy was awesome. Like, that was such a great meeting. Yeah, let me go back to those notes. So those are kind of a little bit. And then finally, I'm kind of going through the whole thing: resume, search, interview, negotiation. So especially for the women, I know your podcast is probably listened to by women and men, but probably has a higher percentage of women. You need to negotiate every single offer. I don't care if they came in $20,000 above what your salary was, what you were expecting. There is something you can negotiate in that offer. There is some extra PTO. There's something you can negotiate that shows that you have really truly considered how this opportunity is fitting into your whole life, right? So to me, it's about aligning with what's important to you in your life at that time. And that changes over time, depending on where you are, right? Mm-hmm. When you maybe don't have as many responsibilities when you're younger, maybe you can travel more. But maybe you can't. Maybe you're single, taking care of a sick parent, or you want, because you are you want to do yoga every week. And that's important to you. And that's what's going to make you a better employee. I've had numerous situations where I've had to like backtrack and consider the advice I've given to people, because I've noticed it can be, how shall I say, it's not the right advice at first. My inclination is to say, oh, you don't have kids and you're not married? Well, you should totally take that job that's going to work you to the bone 90 hours a week. Why? Why am I giving that advice? You have every right to have a good work-life balance, no matter what your scenario is. Now, again, it's your choice. It's your career. If you want to double down and work like a dog because that's what you love and you want to do that, great, perfect, good, go for it. But I think I think if you don't, you shouldn't be penalized for wanting to have a work-life balance, regardless of where you are in your life status. However, again, I say those things may change for you. You
Right.
may have your kids be going off to college and you're like, you know what? I would love to have a job that allowed me to travel a little bit more. My husband works remotely and he could travel with me or whatever it is. So
Right.
I think knowing where you are in your life will allow you to pull on levers again for negotiation of what you need.
Right. So I kind of want to transition to work-life balance. I know you have 3 children.
Mm-hmm.
And so talk a little bit about what it's like to be a working mom and to have these 3 children.
It is amazing. And I will tell you, I've done both routes. I've done the working in the office for all of my career until this past year, when I joined the team at TorchLight, and we are 100% remote. And we get together. We actually are having a meeting at our CEO's house tomorrow, and we're getting together for like our Thanksgiving feast together, which is wonderful. But on the regular, we're all working remotely. And it took a while. I think it took me almost a year to like feel comfortable and confident in how I schedule myself and how I feel guilty if I read my 3-year-old a story at nap time. I'm like, why? I just took a 10-minute break. Why am I feeling guilty about that? It's weird. I'm not a cleaner, so I've never been like enticed to clean dishes when I should be doing work. Like, that's just silly for me. So I've never had a problem with that. But I worked through having all my kids. So I took the 3 months. I've always worked for a small business. So I took most of those unpaid. And I wanted to nurse all my kids. So I came back at the 3-month point exactly. And I brought my pump with me, and I'm in external sales. So I was a pumping working mom 3 times through. Actually did a little, do you know Ignite Baltimore? There's
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
yeah, I did an Ignite talk. One of my first, I've done two, but the one I did first was on pumping and
That's great.
like being in sales and what it's like, what companies can do to be supportive of their working moms and what loyalty that'll engender, and just how it's so important for the health of kids and the health of families and the health of communities, and businesses need to kind of get on board. So anyway, I digress. But I guess I knew when I got engaged to my husband, who's in theater, that I would always work and there was never going to be a stay-at-home option for me. And I was fine with that. I would have made no aspersions that I was going to be able to be home with my kids. And I love my work. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. I love my kids. I love my work. I'm sure everybody's heard of that Atlantic article, Can Women Have, Women Can't Have It All. It was out a couple of years ago. And there was this whole like, no, women can't have it all in the society that we have right now. And I like to say women can have it all, but just not exactly at the very same time. Like there always is going to be a give and take, right? There's always going to be priorities. You're going to have a big meeting and a sick kid. And that seems like, well, that's a terribly sticky situation, but you make a decision and you pull on whatever you can. If the kid's really sick, then you ask somebody at work to take your meeting or you reschedule the meeting. If the meeting's really important and the kid's moderately sick, maybe you have someone in your family that can, or a friend that can, flex in and take your kid to the doctor. But that's life, right? That you're making these constant trade-offs. And I think it doesn't mean that you're any less of a mom, and it doesn't mean you're any less committed to your work, because in one space and time, you've had to make a decision prioritizing one over the other. I really believe, and I hope that the world of work will move to a position of seeing people as human beings and not weird employee automatons. Like people talk about employee experience. I'm like, employee experience is human experience, right? Customer experience is human experience. We're all human beings. We all get sick. We all have parents that get sick. We have addictions in our lives. We have stressors in our lives. We have kids with special needs. I have a kid with special needs. So, we all have these aspects of who we are in total as human beings. And to think that you're going to turn it off when you go into the office for 8 hours, or when you work from home for 8 hours or 9 hours or 10 hours, it's just silly. Like we are full people. I heard this other, it's funny when I go to these events and I hear different talks and things, there are certain people and moments that sort of stick in my mind. And it was at an Ignite. And a woman got up and she talked about the Industrial Revolution and research and work that she's done, and sort of changes in the world of work, in the workplace. And she started out saying, how come when we screw up something, we say, well, I'm only human. And when we do something that's really great, we're like, man, I was a machine. And it's like, oh. It's so interesting to consider. Like, I was a machine on that one. And you're thinking like, what are we saying in those two phrases, out to the world? Like, oh, well, when I screw up and when I do something wrong, I'm only human. It's like, no, you are human. So I think, wow, you're kind of getting me going someplace, Tracy, right now.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Well, back to your children and your daughter, right, with special needs.
My daughter. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. And I mean, how you cope, how you deal with it, what your beliefs are around it, and kind of.
Gosh. So I have 3 kids. My oldest is 8, little boy, Colin. My middle is 5, Emmy, and my youngest is 3, Julian. So 3 kids. I have a great husband, Brad. He works in theater, and then we are really very, very lucky. My mother-in-law, Sandy, lives with us. So we have a blended home. And she helps with the care of our kids, and because Brad and I both work full time. And so she's definitely, it's amazing having someone in our life like that as well. And then I'm close with my sister and my parents, and they also help out whenever we have a need to maybe have a break or go on a date, or, Brad and his mom to go see a show. So that's how I cope and how we cope. When we first, and she is diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And we got that diagnosis early on. She was kind of classically showing signs of something going on developmentally. I'd say as early as 12 months, if not a little sooner, but you don't typically get the autism diagnosis until you're right around 3. So she's 5.5 now. She'll be 6 in February. And we got that diagnosis 3 years ago in October. So it was a little bit before, a couple months before her 3rd birthday. But again, we knew something was up. We just didn't know exactly what it was. So I think as many parents with kids with special needs will say, there are incredibly tough, hard, painful, doubt, driving experiences, and your idea of what your relationship with your child is going to be like and what their future is going to be like, which a lot of people like to think about the futures of their kids all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Why you think about the schools and the sports and the this and the that kind of crumbles and gets turned all around. And then you're trying to make sure that you can fit it all into your greater family, keeping your eyes open for how your whole family is operating and healthy and functioning. And sometimes that works and sometimes you fail at that too. So I think from a beliefs standpoint, I believe through the toughest, hardest, most painful, challenging moments, you are given a ton of strength and a lot of blessings, and your capacity to forgive yourself, forgive your spouse, forgive other people is just expanded 100-fold, because you'll never look at a kid that you think is being bad, or parents that you think are not reprimanding their kids or parenting their kids properly the same way again, because I'm the parent that people look at. I'm the parent when the kid is melting down in church or melting down in a store, or mm-hmm. melting down. I'm the one that people look at and judge. We're the ones who have, the cops called on us, which has all happened. It happens because especially with autism, you don't often see the difference. It's not a seeable disability, developmental disability. Mm-hmm. You can't tell. You make assumptions. So I think in so many ways, it's like you can't imagine it being any different because it's your life. Mm-hmm. You can imagine it being different, but you can't quite imagine it because it's just who we are as a family, and it's who she is. And I have been gifted by so many strangers. On the flip from those that may judge us, there have been people that I've been introduced to who have given time and care and concern, and were strangers. I'll tell you a quick story. There was a woman that was introduced to me early on when we were just getting the diagnosis, and I never met her. I got her phone number, and she and I texted, and then she said, "Do you want to talk?" And we would talk at like 10 o'clock at night. I'd talk to her on my way home from work when I didn't want to go home because I didn't want to face it. I just wanted to work. And I talked to her on the way to work when I was exhausted and not sleeping. And I didn't meet her until this year, 3 years after she had been this kind of this angel in my life. And she never knew that. And she just said, "You know what, you'll give this back to someone, right. Whether it's directly to someone who has a child that's on the spectrum, or whether it's to someone that is going through something else in their life. Like, you'll give it back to someone. I know you will, or just promise me you will.
Right, right.
So, um, so yeah. And I think about it all the time in my work, all the time now. It's constantly in the back of my mind when I think about the world of work. I've sort of started to educate myself just on people with disabilities, people on the autism spectrum, and their prospects for work. Because again, if we go back to the beginning of our conversation around people being at the core, wanting to have a meaningful impact in the world, wanting to do something meaningful with their life, that doesn't negate those that have a developmental disability or have another type of disability.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it kind of all, I think, in the last couple of years has just collided into, there's no separation in my mind between what goes on in my, in my personal life, if you will, and what I think about and what I care about in my work life, which is kind of a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's all kind of come together. And I noticed that you were recognized as one of Maryland's leading women in 2017. So congratulations on that. That's a huge accomplishment. It's not something that is just given away. It's, totally based on professional accomplishments, community involvement, all these things that you are out there doing in both your work and your personal life. So what a great honor to be recognized by the Maryland community, right?
It was really very, I was really honored. I will put a little asterisk on it. It was really interesting because I was nominated by someone that was a former coworker of mine. And so I was like, wow, she's really dynamic, talented, connected person in the Baltimore and Maryland community. And I was really honored that she nominated me. And then I ended up getting let go from that company for the first time in my life. I went through a layoff, and I've been the prime breadwinner in my family. I have a child with special needs. And so there were these other stressors that kind of came colliding in. But the really interesting thing was when I found out that I got the award, I had just accepted the opportunity with TorchLight. So in the space of time that I was nominated, that I put in my application, I got let go. I went on my own search. I got a new job. And so it ended up in my mind, it was this strange, like, only me can get an award when I'm unemployed for my work. But then by the time the actual award ceremony and the publication went out and everything, I had already landed at TorchLight. So, it ended up working out, but that was kind of like a parting gict almost.
Yeah. Well,
it wasn't intended to be that in any way whatsoever. But it just was, it was almost like that string that I was still connected to this organization, but it was, it's never, the life that we lead is never these sort of black and white straight moves. There's always a flow. If you think about, if I go back to autism, right, and there's a spectrum to it, your life kind of has a spectrum too. You don't necessarily have, some huge highs and some huge lows, but we don't live like that, and some of us do, and that's very stressful. But it's like the spectrum of movement, that's fairly fluid. And I think about that award, and I think what an amazing honor, and what an interesting position that I was in when I received it. And I'll never forget those, that connected place that award has in my career.
The universe has a good sense of humor.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So my finale question that I always ask all my guests is, what's the bravest thing that you've ever done, and how does it inspire you today?
Gee whiz. The bravest thing I've ever done. I mean, I guess what comes to mind out of the gate is, it sounds pretty normal, but I think it would be just getting up when it was so hard, when we were in the early stages of the diagnosis with my daughter. I think the reason I say that is because just getting up, going to work, coming home, we were so exhausted emotionally, physically. I was sleeping maybe 2 hours at a clip, 2 hours, and then I was up, and then sleeping for another hour, and then up. And I mean, I just was so exhausted. And I thought, I don't know how long this is going to last. I don't know. Everything was it came crashing down so fast, even though I knew it was coming, I think. But I think just getting up and going to work and going and keeping on in the daily routine was a pretty brave accomplishment. The other area I think would be when I was laid off. Like, that was a scary moment, and I wrote about it. I was really honest about it. I talk about it a lot because I think in the society that we live in, we sort of get really caught up with our work and what that means about the worth that we have. And I came to a realization that you are worth just because you are you. Just because you are present and living right now, you are worth something. Not because of any sales goal you meet, not because of any client you land, not because of any marketing campaign that brings in billions of dollars. You are worth just as much as Jeff Bezos.
Right.
And, I think you have to hit moments of crisis often to have some clarity that comes out of those painful moments. I guess those would be the two that I think of that are recent in my life. And
I think I would agree. I think that when you have these things that happen to you that you don't see coming, and you think, how am I going to have the strength to deal with them? And then you just have to surrender into the moment and just take it one day at a time and realize that your worth isn't tied to your job or, the things that you figure out what really matters.
Yeah. And, it's going to be kind of a radical thing too. Like, my worth isn't tied up in my kids. It's not tied up in my husband.
Right.
That is something maybe not, I think we're like, well, it's all about the kids. And I'm like, no, like, my kids are their own people and I can equip them and prepare them. But them being, doctors or, whatever, you want them to be successful, but I think you just can't for me, it's not about that either.
Right.
And that's an interesting place. I mean, I've shared it. Emmy was about 3.5 before she even said mom. And I remember thinking, like, if only she would say mom. And I was the last one. She's like, Colin, Julian, Dad, Nana, like everybody. I'm like, well, what about me? Like, your mom. And then when she said it, I mean, now she says it all the time. So I'm like, can you stop saying mom? But no, I think about that when she says it. I'm like, no, it's such a gift that she can speak, because there are plenty of people on the autism spectrum and with other disabilities that will never say mom. And I think about it now because she's never said, I love you. She's almost 6. And I say it every night. I've said it every night for 5 years and however many months she is. You remember when they're babies, like how many days they are. Once they get older, you're like, I don't know, they're almost 6. Every single night, every single morning. And a couple nights ago, she said, she looked at her little kitten that she sleeps with, and she said, "Love you, Pink Kitty." And I was like, could I be Pink Kitty? Like, I really want to be Pink Kitty. I was like, well, if she loves Pink Kitty, I'll eventually get it, right?
Yes.
But I think that's part of it too. I am a spiritual person. I am a practicing Catholic, which a lot of people might turn off your podcast right now, but I'm a proud practicing Catholic. And I think if I'm going to live out my faith, and I have an ability to love someone who may never say back, that's a big gift right there. To like love without getting it back, and to keep doing it, even though you may never hear it. There's some blessings that come out of that, and some grace. And then that like breaks me open to do that with more people, strangers, right? That may never give me back what I've given them potentially.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, giving your advice, and just being a brave girl in general. So I know that our audience is going to love this episode, and I know that there's somebody out there in podcast land that is going to hear something that it's going to be exactly what they need to hear at that moment. So thank you so much for being you and showing up as you authentically and doing the work that you're doing both at work and at home.
Thank you. This was so great.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. as much as I did creating it. Each show is produced with you, the listener, in mind, as you look for inspiration and motivation from other brave souls as you pursue your desires. I'd love to hear your feedback, so please leave me a review on iTunes. I read every one. And check out my website, tracym.com, for more free resources. You can also join my list and sign up for my newsletter right from the homepage. Until next time, stay strong, believe in your dreams, and go do something brave.
We appreciate you joining us for this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. and hope that you enjoyed the show. For more information about today's episode, as well as additional free resources to help you achieve greatness in your life, visit tracym.com and sign up for our mailing list. Until next time, dream big, believe in yourself, and let your brilliance shine as only you can do.